Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Vietnam. Hello, Ralph.
Good afternoon. I'm Ralph Wandel Empire from your EBC Vietnam Bureau to give you the latest updates in ASEAN dynamic region.
On today's headlines. A magnitude 6.4 earthquake struck off the coast of Occidental Mindoro, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology.
Thousands of Russian tourists in Thailand are struggling to find a route home, Thai officials said on Sunday as international sanctions imposed over the war in Ukraine hit holiday makers.
Philippine Air Force FA-50 Philippine jet fighter pilots will have the opportunity to practice air combat maneuvering tactics with American F-16 fighter pilots during the bilateral air contingent exchange Philippines, which will be held from March 14 to the 25th.
ASEAN is committed to welcoming travelers back to the Southeast Asia region and to better ensure the health and safety of travelers. ASEAN has created safety and health protocols to reduce possible exposure to viruses and keep everyone healthy.
First in our news, a magnitude 6.4 earthquake struck off the coast of Occidental Mindoro Monday morning. That is according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. The tectonic quake struck 110 kilometers northwest of the municipality of Lubang at 5:05 a.m. The earthquake was 28 kilometers deep. Intensity 4 was felt in Lubang, Occidental Mindoro, 3 in Nasugbu, Batangas, Tagaytay City, Amadeo, Maragondon, Mendez, and Alfonso Cavite, Quezon City, Taguig City, Mandaluyong, Makati, Navotas, Pasig, Plaridel, Bulacan. Intensity 2 was reported in Talisay, Batangas, Palawig, San Felipe, and Castillejos, Zambales, Malabon, and Intensity 1 in Parañaque City. While aftershocks are likely, PHIVOLCS is not expecting damage from the quake. Based on PHIVOLCS scale, damage starts at Intensity 6. Now, strong and shallow earthquake shook western Indonesia and the Philippines' main island early Monday. It rattled buildings and sent panicked residents fleeing, but causing no casualties or damage. In Indonesia, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake hit off the west coast of Sumatra Island. And in the Philippines, a 6.4 magnitude tremor struck 110 kilometers off Luzon Island. That is according to the United States Geological Survey. Officials in both countries said there were no immediate reports of casualties or damage, and there was no tsunami threat from either quake. The one off Indonesia hit at 4:06 a.m. at a depth of 21 kilometers, with its epicenter 167 kilometers west of Sumatra's Pariaman City. The earthquake was strongly felt for 1 minute. Residents got panicked due to the geological activity, according to Indonesia's National Disaster Mitigation Agency in a statement, or the BNBP. Indonesia and the Philippines sit on the Pacific Ring of Fire, causing them to experience frequent earthquakes. Meanwhile, 4 people were killed after a massive landslide triggered by unusual heavy rains buried their homes in a township outside the Malaysian capital, according to a senior rescue official. Now, Malaysia has been experiencing heavy rains over the past few weeks, which officials and environmentalists say is unusual at this time of the year and could be the result of climate change. Norazam Kamis, the emergency services chief of Selangor State, said the landslide happened in the suburb of Ampang on Thursday. Rescuers, backed by an earth mover, recovered 4 dead bodies, and a 5th person was rescued alive, according to Norazam. He also said torrential rains lasting 30 minutes caused a nearby hill to erode, sending tons of soil mixed with water crashing down on a row of houses below. The mud flow completely destroyed 2 houses and damaged almost a dozen other homes. According to local media, 10 vehicles were also damaged. Meenakshi Raman, president of environmental group Friends of the Earth, said that Malaysia faces more natural calamities, and flash floods hit the capital Kuala Lumpur a few days ago after a heavy downpour turning roads into rivers, damaging hundreds of cars and flooding houses. And the news continues. They're on ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Mr. Bawal, may ibis ka, oh.
Asan?
It's a prank!
Okay lang manakot. Pero kung mananakot ka para sa boto, bawal yan.
Ayon sa Omnibus Election Code, threats, intimidation, terrorism, use of fraudulent device or other forms of coercion is an election offense.
Sino kausap mo? Makaalis na nga, sa iba na lang ako mananakot.
Mr. Pwede! Mr. Pwede! May malaking ibis sa likod mo.
Nox! Babawi ka pa, ha? Di mo ako maiisahan!
Ako si Mr. Bawal na nagpapaalala sa inyo na ang pananakot para sa boto. Ibis! Hoy! Bawal yan!
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Now let's go to Thailand, where thousands of Russian tourists are struggling to find a route home. That's according to Thai officials on Sunday, as international sanctions imposed over the war in Ukraine hit holidaymakers. Russia's invasion in February provoked a host of international measures targeting businesses and banks, with some Russian carriers canceling flights and global payment firms suspending services. Russian tourists have been among the largest group of visitors to return to Thailand's beachside resorts since pandemic restrictions eased, but many now find themselves without a return ticket. Tourism Authority of Thailand official Chatan Kunjarana Ayuda said that there are 3,100 Russians were stopped in Phuket, while just over 2,000 were in Samui, and smaller numbers were in Krabi, Phang Nga, and Bangkok. While Thailand has not banned Russian flights, international airspace restrictions have seen some firms, such as Russia's flagship Aeroflot, canceling services, leaving tourists to seek alternative routes, such as through the Middle East with different carriers. Many tourists have also been hit by Visa and MasterCard suspending operations. A kindergarten is among buildings seriously damaged due to shelling over the past few days in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned NATO on Monday that its member states would soon be attacked by Russian forces after an airstrike hit a Ukrainian military base close to the Polish border. Meanwhile, the death toll in the strategic southern port city of Mariupol, facing acute deprivation amid a prolonged siege, has topped 2,000, officials there said. While Western Ukraine has largely been spared so far, Russian airstrikes overnight Saturday into Sunday carried the war deep into the west, killing 35 people and wounding 134 at a military base near Yavoriv, outside the city of Lviv, which is dangerously close to the frontier with EU and NATO member Poland. A convoy of humanitarian buses travels from Zaporizhia to the devastated port city of Mariupol in southern Ukraine to transport aid and fetch evacuees. Let's watch this video.
Вас два человека, да? Да.
Meanwhile, Partido Reforma standard-bearer Senator Panfilo Lacson said the Philippines must be fully prepared for a possible spillover to Asia of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The presidential aspirant added the country must walk the talk since it has supported the United Nations General Assembly resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He also said this includes allowing the use of the country's facilities by allies such as the United States. As early as February, Lacson, chair of the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security, had called on the Philippine authorities to prepare for the effects of the conflict. Presently, he noted, we are already feeling the effects of the conflict on the economy, with fuel prices already skyrocketing. While hoping Russia-Ukraine conflict will not lead to a nuclear war, Lacson said it is better that the Philippines should prepare for all scenarios. ASEAN in Focus will be right back. Please stay tuned.
Karapatan natin lahat na iboto ang karapat-dapat! Tama! Lahat ng Pilipino pwedeng bumoto!
Kung rehistrado ka.
Ha?
Ang lahat ng Pilipinong rehistrado lamang ang maaaring bumoto. 1 taon ang ibinibigay ng Commission on Elections para magparehistro ang mga Pilipinong boboto sa darating na eleksyon. Kailangan gawin ito para maiwasan ang tinatawag na flying voters. Teka, lahat ba kayo nagparehistro na?
Opo! Rehistrado na kami lahat!
Bakit tahimik ka? Hindi ka nakapagrehistro, no?
Nakakalimutan ko.
Hindi ka pwedeng bumoto. Mabuti pa, bumili ka na lang ng balot.
Pagka kami pa bumili ng balot, pwede na kami bumoto.
Hindi, pero mabubusog ka. Para sa karagdagang kaalaman, makipag-ugnayan lang sa pinakamalapit na barangay o bisitahin ang COMELEC website.
A public service message of Net25 for Mata ng Halalan 2022. Matatag, matapang, matapat.
The Ministry of Health confirmed 209,501 COVID cases on Sunday, raising Vietnam COVID-19 patient tally to 6,112,648. The latest patients consist of 15 imported cases and 209,486 domestic infections. And the same day, the ministry reported an additional 95,538 recoveries, taking the total number of recovered cases to 3,163,571. The ministry also announced further 95 fatalities, bringing the nation's COVID death toll to 41,385, or 0.7% of the total infections. The nation has administered 200,179,247 COVID vaccine doses, an increase of 215,529 doses from Saturday. Overseas Filipino workers are assured of more protection amid the global health crisis with the expanded compulsory insurance coverage that will include rehires and direct hires. Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE Secretary Silvestre Bello III, who chairs the governing board of the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, said in a news release on Sunday that the guidelines have been issued to implement Department Order Number 228, or the expanded compulsory insurance coverage for rehires and direct hires. The insurance policy shall be effective for the duration of the employment contract and assures coverage in the case of death, disability, repatriation, medical emergency, and litigation. It also provides for at least $15,000 survivor's benefit in case of accidental death, at least $10,000 survivor's benefit in case of natural death, and at least $7,500 disability benefit. Also included are repatriation, including transport of personal belongings, and the termination with or without valid cause. In case of death, the insurance provider shall arrange and pay for the repatriation of remains of the overseas Filipino worker. Taiwan's live fire drills around Ba Bin or Ituaba Island of Vietnam's Truong SA archipelago seriously violate Vietnam's territorial sovereignty over the Truong SA archipelago, according to the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Lê Thi Tong Han. Lê made the statement on Friday in reply to reporters' query on Vietnam's response to the live fire drills conducted by Taiwan. The spokesman said the live fire drills threaten peace, stability, maritime safety, and security, induce tensions, and complicate the situation in the East Sea. Vietnam has full legal grounds and historical evidence to assert its sovereignty over the Hoa SA Paracel and Truong SA Spratly archipelagos in accordance with the international law, she affirmed. Vietnam resolutely opposes, she said, and demands Taiwan to cancel its illegal live fire drills and not to repeat similar actions in the future. The Philippine Air Force, or FA-50 Philippine jet fighter pilots, will have the opportunity to practice air combat maneuvering, or ACM tactics, with American F-16 fighter pilots during the bilateral air contingent exchange, or base Philippines, which will be held from March 14 to the 25th. PAF spokesperson Colonel Maynard Mariano made this remark when asked by the Philippine News Agency Monday whether the two-week maneuvers will feature ACM between the Mach 1.5 capable FA-50 Philippines and the participating F-16s from the United States Air Force 13th Squadron. Asked to clarify how many PAF and USAF aircraft will be participating in these ACM drills, Mariano said that it will be 4 FA-50 PH or 50 Philippines versus 4 F-16s. Now, previous iterations of the Base P have previously conducted 3 similar maneuvers, but on a smaller scale. 12 U.S. F-16s will be participating in this year's Base P, while 10 F-A-50 PHS from the PAF's 5th Fighter Wing. The American aircraft arrived in the country last March 12. ACM refers to the tactical art of moving, turning, and/or situating one's fighter aircraft in order to attain a position from which an attack can be made on another aircraft. It relies on offensive and defensive basic fighter maneuvering to gain an advantage over an aerial opponent. Mariano said that the exercise will also allow or feature simulated guns and missile kills among opposing American and Filipino aircraft.
Meanwhile, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. is embarking on an official visit to Morocco to sign a number of bilateral agreements with the North African states, the Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, said on Monday. His visit is upon the invitation of his Moroccan counterpart, Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita, and will be his first official trip to North Africa as Foreign Secretary. Locsin and Bourita are expected to sign the Philippines-Morocco Air Services Agreement, the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between the Foreign Service Institute and the Moroccan Academy for Diplomatic Studies, and the MOU on political consultations. Also to be signed is the cooperation agreement between the state-run Philippine News Agency, or PNA, and Maghreb Arabe Press. Locsin will then hold a bilateral meeting with Bourita to discuss the strengthening of the cordial ties between the Philippines and Morocco and ways to advance the common interests of the two countries in various areas of cooperation. The two nations established diplomatic relations in April 1975. Now, there are an estimated 4,600 Filipinos living and working in Morocco, the majority of whom are employed in domestic, beauty and wellness, and skilled sectors. Available data suggests continued recovery of domestic economic activities, with industrial production growing by 8.5% and retail sales by 3.1% compared to the same period last year, despite the effects of the recent surge in COVID-19 infections on labor supply, production, and consumption. The figures were referred in the World Bank's Vietnam Macro Monitoring for March 2022, which was released on March 11. Compared to a year ago, foreign direct investment, or FDI, commitments slowed while FDI disbursement increased for the third month in a row, highlighted the WB. The report shows that despite rising energy prices, consumer price index, or CPI, inflation remains subdued thanks to relatively stable food prices. Credit demand remains strong after the Lunar New Year, keeping overnight interbank interest rate at 2.56% at the end of February, compared to less than 1% at the end of 2021. Now, in other news, Asian markets mostly fell Monday as traders tracked developments in the Ukraine war and diplomatic efforts to bring the crisis to an end, while this week's Federal Reserve meeting is in focus as it prepares to start lifting interest rates. Oil prices dropped, providing some respite after they soared to a near 14-year high last week, though the commodity remains elevated around $110 and keeping upward pressure on inflation. Trading floors continue to be flooded with uncertainty as Russia's war in Ukraine rages, with comments from Vladimir Putin that there were positive developments in talks with Kyiv, unable to provide much support. The prospect of higher borrowing costs has seen the dollar rally across the board, hitting multi-year highs against the yen, pound, and euro. After another drop on Wall Street, Asia struggled. Hong Kong led losses, shedding more than 3% and below 20,000 for the first time in almost 6 years. Tech firms were among the worst hit owing to concerns over China's crackdown on the sector, and as the country's tech hub Shenzhen was put into lockdown. Shanghai, Seoul, Singapore, Taipei, Manila, Bangkok, and Wellington also tumbled, though Tokyo, Sydney, and Jakarta rose. ASEAN is committed to welcoming travelers back to the Southeast Asia region, and to better ensure the health and safety of travelers, ASEAN has created safety and health protocols to reduce possible exposure to viruses and keep everyone healthy. Let's watch this video.
Southeast Asia is excited to welcome you back. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, has developed common guidelines to promote hygiene and safety throughout our tourism industry, so that you can trust that your visit will not only be beautiful, fascinating, and warm, but safe and healthy too. Tourism businesses in 8 sectors, including hotels, restaurants, spas, fitness facilities, community-based tourism, tour operators, convention centers, and theme parks, are now implementing the common ASEAN guidelines on hygiene and safety. Entry to tourism businesses will include automatic temperature checks and no-touch hand sanitizer, because safeguarding your health couldn't be more important. Inside establishments, tourism professionals are implementing industry standard practices, including masking, disinfecting surfaces, social distancing, and more, to make your trip safe and enjoyable. Maintaining the safety of the guests and staff is our highest priority. Businesses that adhere to the guidelines may display the ASEAN Tourism Safe and Warm stamp, so you'll know you can trust them. Southeast Asia is ready, and we can't wait to see you.
The 4IR offers people the opportunity to grow better connected, helps economies grow and become more competitive, empowers ASEAN citizens and improves their livelihoods through digitalizing the provision of basic social services, and helps society decarbonize to meet sustainable development challenges confronting the region. Let's take a look.
We have come to a point where communities are no longer just physical. The world is rapidly moving into the digital space, in a phenomenon that is also called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. By and large, the opportunities deriving from the Fourth Industrial Revolution in ASEAN are limitless, as its technologies allow people to stay connected, help the region's economy to recover, grow, and become more competitive, and improve and empower ASEAN citizens' livelihood and lives. To stay ahead, ASEAN brings forward its consolidated strategy, which embraces a unified and cross-pillar approach to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In the area of technological governance and cybersecurity, we envision a digital ASEAN that is open, secure, transparent, and connected, while respecting privacy and ethics in line with international practices. In the area of digital economy, what we are after is a digital ASEAN that harnesses technologies to build a resilient, inclusive, integrated, and globally competitive economy. Finally, in the area of digital transformation of society, what is envisioned is a digital ASEAN that embraces innovation in transforming society, contributing to social progress and sustainable development. Today, in ASEAN, we are proud to say that we are moving towards a digital community and are ready to make the most of what the Fourth Industrial Revolution has to offer.
The 7th ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC Dialogue, took place online at February 17, 2022, to discuss the findings and recommendations in the ASEAN Business Sentiment Study 2020 to 2021, which gauged ongoing sentiment of the ASEAN indigenous enterprises towards the implementation of the AEC Blueprint 2025. Let's take a look.
The establishment of the ASEAN Economic Community, AEC, in 2015 has opened up numerous business opportunities for the regional community with its vision of ASEAN as a single market and production hub characterized by the free flow of goods, services and investments, as well as a more liberal movement of capital and skills. As the AEC continues to mature, opportunities arise for enterprises looking to expand in or into the ASEAN market. As such, regular pulse checks on the integration efforts are crucial to ensure that the targeted objectives are met on timely fashion, as well as identifying challenges that may be a hindrance to achieving the objectives. The ASEAN Secretariat commissioned the ASEAN Business Sentiment Survey 2020-2021 to gather insights on the AEC implementation from the viewpoints of the ASEAN indigenous enterprises, which forms the backbone of the business ASEAN community. This study aims to gather insights and recommendations from ASEAN indigenous enterprises on the following: the perceived impact of ASEAN economic integration under the AEC on their businesses and industries. To delve deeper into the sentiment on services trade liberalization. To understand how ASEAN can further develop and improve regional economic integration. Indigenous enterprises' feedback on AEC implementation was gathered through the following key activities: a survey across 1,115 indigenous enterprises, key informant interview (KII) sessions held with senior leaders of 106 indigenous enterprises, and 29 workshops with 248 representatives from indigenous enterprises, the financial sector, distribution sector, and tourism sector. ASEAN's greater economic integration was driven by the formation of an integrated platform cohesive to offset domestic challenges in most of the AMS. The growth is supported through the Trade Facilitation Strategic Action Plan, which oversees the 7 strategic objectives. Encourage the accelerated implementation of trade facilitation measures which have been accepted by international institutions such as the World Trade Organization, WTO, and/or the World Customs Organization, WCO. Achieve competitive, efficient, and seamless movement of goods within the region to enhance ASEAN's trade and production networks, better participate in global value chains, and establish a highly integrated and cohesive economy. Put in place an effective and responsive regional approach to efficiently address the trade-distorting effect of NTMs with a view to pursuing legitimate policy objectives while reducing cost and time of doing business in ASEAN. Actively engage the private sector with particular emphasis on the development and promotion of micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs. Enhance the institutional coordination among the relevant sectorial bodies of ASEAN to effectively implement the trade facilitation measures under their respective purview, consistently with their sectorial work plans for 2016 to 2025 and the ASEAN Blueprint 2025. Work towards increasing the participation of all AMS, especially the less developed AMS, in the process of implementation of ASEAN trade facilitation programs. Improve the monitoring mechanism for the implementation of trade facilitation measures with a view to increasing their effectiveness and responsiveness in improving the competitiveness of ASEAN industries and businesses. Insights from this study formed 4 key messages. Indigenous enterprises in general have a positive outlook on AEC. They acknowledged the positive impact created through various AEC trade liberalization initiatives which supported their business growth and performance. Majority of the indigenous enterprises are pleased with the current integration level and that they look forward for further enhancement and expansion of the integration initiatives. Indigenous enterprises wish to have better access to the comprehensive information repository of AEC policies and programs. They are poised to support and increase their regional investment participation if they have better comprehension of the prospects and opportunities to be derived through AEC. indigenous enterprises in their services sector wish to see more improvement in the standardization of regulations and procedures. Enterprises from developed AMS have better advantage compared to the less developed AMS. In general, the ASEAN Economic Community 2025 Consolidated Strategic Action Plan, which was updated in 2018, has stipulated various measures as a follow-up of the ASEAN 2025 agenda. However, the indigenous businesses and stakeholders within the three services sectors covered, the follow-through is yet to materialize fully as anticipated. Clear actions are needed by all the stakeholders to achieve further liberalization of trade and service. Most notably, ASEAN enterprises need to be clearly informed on the bilateral level decisions and deals that have been made so that they can action upon it. There are 3 action plans that can be followed up upon by both ASEAN Secretariat and each AMS government, which are strengthening the communication and information flow, streamlining an adequate and effective legal framework, digital facilitation and infrastructure improvement. While good progress has been made, more could be done. The ASEAN Business Sentiment Survey 2020-2021 presents 5 recommendations to further liberalize the trade and services in general across ASEAN. Policy transparency and harmonization of standards and regulation. Improve awareness and understanding on the AEC, AFAS and ATISA. Creation of centralized data sharing platform in digital format. Creation of trade dispute settlement framework and common law transaction. Improvement and standardization of labor and professionals' mobility process across region for ease of travel and cost efficiency. The success of the AEC is highly reliant on the overall intra-ASEAN investment environment for the ASEAN indigenous enterprises. The participation and involvement of the private sector are crucial to creating a solid foundation for the successful implementation of the ASEAN Economic Community, AEC. As such, it is imperative that insights and the result of the study will be taken into consideration and ultimately fed into ASEAN policy-making processes.
As always, thank you, Ralph, for keeping me company today here on ASEAN in Focus.
It's always a pleasure, Alma. Thank you too for having me today. And that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today here in AIF. This is Ralph Vandal, MP from your EBC Vietnam Bureau. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Ralph. And we'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. Stay in the news because we live in interesting times.
Paano pagandaan ang mga outing? Umpisa natin sa paggising ng maaga. Siyempre, exercise. Tuloy lang kahit may makakita. Huwag yung paupo-upo lang.
Tapilok lang, naka-wheelchair na agad. Nahulog na ako sa santol. Pinaigib pa ako ng tubig.
Anong problema mo?
Pagandaan nyo din ang bagong game na What's Your Name?
Kala ko dati, kape lang yung magpapasaya ng umaga ko.
I love you. Joke lang yun.
Ito ang mahal.
Sobrang mahal na talaga ng guys. Kailangan na simutin.
Funniest Nakaball Videos.
Welcome to Mobile Legends!
bida sa pelikula, sa commercials, sa game shows, sa puso mo.
Welcome sa ating bagong show! Kung saan hindi ako, pero kayo ang bida.
Mga kwentong may puso at tumatago sa puso.
Gusto ko lang po talagang mai-share sa kanila na they are not alone.
Gumawa ka ng kabutihan kahit mawala na yung kita mo lahat. Bida!
Tinuruan namin yung mga magulang kung paano gumawa ng mga localized solar.
Pati ang mga home daddies, kasama sa kwentuhan. Kaya maging bidarkada na kasama ng ating feel-good host, Aga Mulak.
Let's be the light of kindness in this world. Ito po ang Bida Kayo kay Aga. Gusto niyo bang magkaroon ng tsansang manalo ng 5,000 pesos na nasa bahay lang kayo? Manood lang ng Tara Game agad-agad mula simula hanggang katapusan para makuha ang mga sagot sa dalawang Tara Game questions of the night. Magpunta lang sa www.net25.com, pindutin ang Tara Game Sagot Agad-Agad logo, mag-register at isubmit ang mga sagot mo para magkaroon ka ng entry. Ang dali lang! Natuwa ka na, posible ka pang manalo ng 5,000 pesos. Ang dali lang nito. O ano? Sali na sa Tara Game! Sagot Agad-Agad Promo!
Maraming salamat po, kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo.
Maraming salamat po sa kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo.
Maraming salamat po, kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo.
Karamiwan na kami po'y hinahamak at tinataboy. Pero buong puso niyo kaming tinanggap at kinupkop. Kung dati, kung saan kami naninirahan, ngayon may permanente na kaming tirahan.
Maraming salamat sa kabuhayang pinagkaloob niyo. Hindi na po kami mangangamba sa aming kinabukasan.
Maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay ng edukasyon sa amin upang matupad na ang aming mga pangarap.
Mahal na mahal po